Happy Valentine's Day.
Yes. So I have to be out of here at 5 because I have to pick up my heart-shaped pizza. At,
Oh,
do you ever get those heart-shaped pizzas at Papa Murphy's?
Yes.
Oh, they're so good. I reserve my heart-shaped pizza.
We went to Woodstock.
Close this back
for
down.
Valentine's Day last year. Because I was giving the time to get off all day. They have a good Thai pizza.
I like their Thai pizza. Yes.
I love Thai pizza.
Mhm.
I
So
didn't know
good.
there was. Yes, it's very good.
That's good.
Chicken Thai, if you.
So we get free advertising royalties.
Yep.
Okay, so that was recorded.
Go ahead.
All right. Let's call to order then our Happy Valentine's Day. Here we have our police committee meeting on February 14th at 4 p.m. here in the City Council chambers. Present here are Councillor Diane Crocker, Chief Ken Rubin, Councillor
It's Ruth Kazi.
Ruth
Ruth Kazi.
Sorry, Councillor Ruth Kazi, and myself, Councillor Tristan Nielsen. And Brad is also sitting in for the Plymouth News.
Hi, Brad. So before we start, are you guys, I didn't put it on the agenda. Are you guys, do you have to vote for a new chair? Is it, oh,
do you mind
Customary.
continuing as chair?
Either way, and someone else wants to be. I'm here to learn. Okay.
I'd like to nominate Teresa Nielsen as the chair of the committee.
okay. Do we have to vote or not?
Yes, we do have to.
You guys do it then.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion. Okay,
Thank you.
all in, Teresa Nielsen has been nominated, I've been nominated, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, so I'll continue in this role.
Thank you.
All right, so we have some minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting?
So moved.
And a second, I will second that. All in favor of approving the minutes, please indicate.
Aye.
All right, unanimously approved. So we'll now turn the time over to Chief Rubin for continuing the meeting.
Okay, so I didn't put this on here, just a little overview. So for our newbie, these meetings, if you get to know me, I'm pretty informal. We usually have an agenda. There's nothing wrong with asking questions outside the agenda generally, unless you try to hijack me, and then we're gonna have a problem. No, but this committee is different than the other committees. This isn't a committee to come up with new ideas or do things. It's technically set up for me to brief you. What that means is, though, if you guys have an issue, as you know, you can call me before the meetings or talk to the chair. And if you, let's say you want to discuss, theft of trash cans, or just making something up here, some issue that's going on in town, like that constituents want to talk about, or you guys to learn about, and go back to the city council with a briefing from this committee, you can talk to the chair, call me, we'll put it on the agenda and talk about it. I think the general reason for that is most cities that have committees, you don't want them to turn into public like complaint forums. That there's other places for that. And then if you guys are involved, that's political because you're elected officials, you don't want to go there. And it's much better to handle it through the typical process of a complaint or something going on in the city that somebody's unhappy with through the regular chain. And then we go to the city council with issues like we always do and everything. So
we're more of a liaison
You're-
than an advisory.
yeah, you're not an advisory role. However,
Yeah.
we wrestle issues in here and we have done on numerous projects. And one thing that's also not on the agenda, Chris asked me to ask you, Teresa, is that because of stuff that happened at the end of the year, our traffic plan never got to the city council for a final vote. And it's done and just needs to be presented to the city council for a final vote. So he asked if you would send him an email or Ruth, and you could put it on the agenda for the next city council meeting to be voted on. Ruth did the last full check over. So that last edition, and if you don't have it, Ruth did the final edit on the very last one. And I think it's in good shape now, unless
Question.
Yeah.
Is this the neighborhood traffic
Yes.
management?
Yes,
Okay.
that never was codified. It needs to be. So
I will take care of
will you
that.
take care of that?
I will.
Okay. All right. So my agenda. So any questions about that? Diane, are we all okay doing first names? Don't have to call you Counselor Nielsen or Counsel. I'll call.
Matt, I do have a question.
Sure.
When we talked about the schools and the streets, is that the same thing or is that a totally different document?
It's probably
It's a
different.
document.
What we did last year for about 6 months is we came up with a traffic plan to allow citizens to make a formal complaint about a traffic issue in their neighborhood that rose above traditional just enforcement. So let's say somebody thought there's just an unfixable problem in their area, or just a chronic, I guess is probably the better word, right? It's the word we end up using in the document. Problem that even with repeated enforcement, it's just not fixing it, because some things that you can't fix. Some things you need some kind of street change or an environmental change or a road change or whatever that is. How do we get from there to the city council to spend money or to evaluate the cost of doing something more than just traditional? So we needed to have a process for that. So we came up with, I think, a really good, about a 7 or 8 page process and how to evaluate a problem and then assign some money to it if we need to, if that happens.
I'm glad you brought that up because I wondered what happened to it.
Yes.
I thought it had died on the vine.
Nope. I think we should get that done. And then it's something that's more official. And then if we have a situation like that, it gives us some teeth, which right now we have some enforcement, standard enforcement teeth, but that's where it ends. So, okay. That makes sense?
Mhm.
And I could get you a copy. I could shoot you a copy if
That'd
you
be
want.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I have your email. Can I borrow your pen? Email.
You should get one of those.
I have a couple of them. Okay, got it. Thank you. All right, so I want to go over the accreditation first. I don't want to get into a long explanation of what it is because it's like I briefed everybody on it. It takes like hours. So I want to invite you, because you haven't been, both of them take me up on coming to the office and just sitting with me, talking about everything in the department, how we do things. And one of my, I feel very strongly about, because I'm heavily involved in accreditation for police departments. I'm currently the board chair of the Oregon Accreditation Alliance, which we just changed our name to the Accreditation Alliance because Alaska police departments and sheriff's departments have now contracted with the state of Oregon Alliance to help their agencies become accredited through our organization. So, and we're hoping that Idaho has reached out to us and it's going to be a regional, which would be great. I mean, the more agencies we get involved, the better. So we're now called the Accreditation Alliance. And if you go to it's still OAA.org, the website, if you want any information on it. So is it working? Okay. So basically what it does, just in a nutshell for you, Diane, is, and this you'll see why it's incredibly important to small agencies. It gives this agency, call it an agency, it's just basically an organization, and the organization is overseen by the Oregon Association of Chiefs of Police, and they assign a group of seasoned chiefs to oversee the program that their agencies are accredited already. So we're fully invested in the program, and it's to provide standards and practices above just regular operations to agencies to make them more professional and better equipped. So I believe right now we have 233 standards that are put out by the organization that require agencies to report and to analyze different parts of our operations and report them out to a third party, which is this organization and a review panel. And then every year we report all this stuff to them. And then they also do on-site visits. Then every 3 years, they do a full audit, an on-site audit. And we just went through that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And I'll give you, for instance, I put some things down here. Let's say use of force is a great example. So in addition to all the state standards and rules about use of force, the Oregon Accreditation Alliance requires members to have a separate form on use of force that's filled out by the officer using force and the manager, and that use of force has to be reviewed, all use of force in those reports has to be reviewed by a panel within the agency once a year and every year. So at the end of it, to give you, and then to write a report about it that goes to the organization. So for instance, if we have 5 uses of force in a year, we have to convene a panel of users and managers in our office. So it's me, Dave, and we pick somebody from the union, and we go over every use of force. We write a report about each one, if it was proper, was it, we watch the videos, which is great because we have body cam. So it's cheating because it's super easy. We can just watch it. It's not like we have to read the reports and everything. We can watch the actual incident that happens. Find out if the person used the tools available properly. So let's say, I'll just make something up. Let's say a guy gets in a tussle with somebody and he should have pushed the person off and used a taser, but he didn't. Okay, we would write, hey, we reviewed this use of force. The officer, if the outcome was fine, nobody was injured or whatever. However, the officer had a taser available and chose not to use it. We need to make sure in training that this is the, and then we write this recommendation about every one of those use of force incidents. We have a document, and then that document has to be uploaded into our system that I showed you how that system works, Power DMS, and that gets reviewed by the organization. That has to happen every year. And then at the end of 3 years, we do an overall last 3 years review about trends, patterns, and anything we're seeing. So if guys just aren't using their taser at all, I'm making this up, that didn't happen. But if we're finding that over and over again, guys are just getting in, rolling around on the ground with people and trying to wrestle them into handcuffs instead of using a taser or threatening a taser, then we know, hey, we're seeing a pattern here. We need to change our training so that people are more comfortable using that, or know when a better option is to use that device. So that's something that is above this. There's no mandate from the state to do that, but the accreditation program requires it, and they require that for pursuits, for use of force, for officer complaints on officer. They require that we report complaints to them in addition to the state. So it's just a different level of oversight. Plus, they have the standards also tie to policies. Each one of the standards that we have ties to a policy that we have to have. So we have to have, for instance, we'll keep using use of force. In addition to our use of force policy, we have to have the standards that they put out about use of force, that use of force has to be fair, it has to be this, has to be that, has to be reported properly, has to be, the whole incident has to be written down in a police report. You have to have body camera footage available after the use of force. The supervisor has to review the use of force, and that has to be in our policy in addition to the accreditation standard. So that's a requirement that they have. That's not a requirement from the state to do that. So, yeah.
So how do you handle that in different states? So you're going to Idaho, Alaska, and Oregon, when different states have different standards. How
That's
do you
right.
do an overall?
So that's why we decided at the last board meeting, it got complicated because we were talking about those very issues, because every state has different laws.
Yeah.
So we decided to do, instead of have just one big alliance, big group, we changed our name to the Alliance, and then there's chapters. So there's the Oregon chapter, and right now there's the Alaska chapter. The two chapters will have a director, and then they will craft their standards. We won't change ours because we have ours, but Alaska has different standards, going to have different standards. They have a lot of rural agencies and all kinds of issues about that, and that will create different standards for them. So they're going to take ours, take what they can out of them, and then add ones for that they have already in different policies and stuff, and then create a standards manual. By the way, if you guys ever want to see it, I have the manual. I mean, we have a manual that we put out to every agency that shows every standard, why it's there, what the tenets of that standard are, and what kind of proofs, that's what I'm getting to next. We have to prove that we meet every standard. And the proof can vary in different things. So one of the things is for our evidence room. So we have 2 evidence locations, one here and one out somewhere else in a locked area. And they're both Oregon State Police Forensic Unit approved locations. So for the evidence module, there's like 20 proofs we have to have. So it'll say, are rifles and handguns stored separately from the other evidence? So you say, yes, we'll prove it. Well, how do you prove that? So it's the inspection that they come and look. We also have yearly audits from, we have to have, this is accreditation standard, not a state standard, by an outside agency. So we have to allow an outside agency, it's usually Benton County or Corvallis PD, come over and do an audit of our evidence room. They also have to do unannounced inspections. They have, so Jeff, the sheriff, or Jason, it used to be Nick, would call up, I'm coming over at 10, I do it for them. So a day that I'm, whenever I'm not doing that, I'll call up, hey, I'm coming over. So I go over to the evidence room and I say, I want to know everything that's in this bin, this bin, and this bin, give me a list. And then we go through make sure that everything that's supposed to be in the bin's in the bin. If it's not in the bin, where is it? And then we write a report saying I did an inspection, or inspections are spot audits. They're not a full go through everything in the whole, but we usually hit the big ticket items. There's 3: weapons, drugs, and money. Those 3 out of all the things. So we usually pick one of each one of those, one container, and then we do an audit of that container to make sure it's all the proper paperwork is done. Well, there is no state law that says we have to do that. There's no state standard, there's no state rules. Evidence rooms are just, hey, you have to be certified, which is just the security piece by the state police. The operational rules are just left to the agencies. Well, the Oregon Accreditation Alliance puts these rules in place to make sure that you're doing it right. I guess that's the best way to say it. It's just a bunch of extra rules that they're tedious, they're a lot of extra work and hours. But in my opinion, especially for small agencies, I would say like 50 officers and down, that usually don't have enough staff to do certain things because you're just small, you're smaller than a big agency. Like I don't have a full-time evidence tech. I am the evidence tech. So for agencies that have, people wear multiple hats in the agency, I think it's really important that you have an outside view, a review that comes in and takes a look at all these really important topics. That way you just can't put it off. You can't get sloppy with things. So when they come in and do an audit, if you don't pass it, they write a recommendations list that goes to the city council and says, hey, your police department's not up to standards. Here's the 7 standards they didn't. And there's 4 or 5 agencies right now that are on probation for not meeting standards. So
Probation is the accreditation,
Yes.
not through the state.
yeah, there's no state. However, it's bad if that word gets out, which it does because it's public. Then you start to ask questions to your police chief and your command staff and your city manager. Why is your police department not doing this right? You guys agreed to be accredited, which is a step above. So you got to weigh that, right? But do you want a professional police agency or not? That's how I always ask, the question I ask. So we had our review, our 3-year review, about 3 weeks ago, and I got a glowing verbal back from them. So the full report usually comes about a month after. So by the end of this month, we should get the full report, and I'll share that with you. I think it went really well. The on-site reviewers always have things that they don't tell you that they're going to look at. So this time they looked at personnel files to make sure our personnel files were up to date, that stuff in them is there that's supposed to be there, and stuff's not supposed to be there. It's got to be removed because, we have rules about how long certain things can be in people's files. They looked at our hiring practices, all of our testing for hiring. So all of our written tests, our oral boards, the scoring, do we give proper preference points for military, all those things that you're supposed to do. They looked at those documents. They looked at use of force. They looked at pursuit policy, which they almost do every time. They looked at, trying to think what else they did. They looked at vehicle emergency equipment, not the radio, but stuff in the trunk that we're supposed to carry to make sure that we're providing our officers with the right amount of flares and, evidence materials in the trunk and cones and safety vests and things like that. So that was one of the things that they did in inspection. So they actually searched the trunks of all of our police cars to see if it was there. We have to have our policy manual by rule available to the public.
Question.
Yes,
I believe the results of your audit.
the last
are
one.
Posted
Yes.
on the website.
Yep, when we get the final report, we'll post it. The one that's on there now is the 2019 version, the last version.
And can you remind me how many agencies belong in the?
Yeah, right
Oregon
now there's
chapter?
there's 224 police agencies in Oregon. I think 90 are accredited. It used to be about 60, and then they just passed a law, the last legislature, that requires all agencies to be accredited by the year 2026.
Oh, good.
But it's stepped in based on size. The big ones have to do it first. Like Portland Police Bureau is not accredited. Beaverton, Hillsborough. Some bigger, Washington County Sheriff's Department, I think just got the credit, just finished their 3 years, because it takes 3 years basically to do the full first course of it. So then smaller agencies based on size, they get an extra year or two to get accredited. So the organization is going to grow.
Yeah.
That's a big issue because you pay to do it. I mean, you pay and you're paying for the basically the oversight of it. We hire assessors that go out and do the on-site assessments, and they're usually retired police officers or chiefs that understand what they're looking at. So right now we have 3, and then we have a technical person that helps with our electronic system, but we're going to have to hire 2 or 3 more assessors over the next couple of years just to handle the amount of work, which is good. I mean, I can't speak highly. I mean, I think it's just a wonderful organization. People really care about the profession and about making sure that people are doing things right. And I think because of that, our state is fantastic with all the national stuff, bad stuff you see. We just don't have it in the state. And that a lot of that, I think, is because of this. This has been going on for 15 years or so that we've done the accreditation. I've been a part of it when I was at DOJ before here. And when I came here, Ken had already started the first accreditation program, and I thought it's great. I've talked to Brad a lot about it. I think it's Corvallis is accredited. Now they do CALIA.
Yeah,
There's a
that's
couple-
what I was gonna ask, doing the larger.
Yeah, but it's so expensive. I mean, we can never. I mean, it's like I can't remember what it is. It's like 30 or 40,000 bucks a year that you're paying to this national organization.
Oh,
It's the same process. You have to have a full-time accreditation manager to do it. So you'd have to have a separate employee, and that's all they do is you gather accreditation documents throughout the year. So it's a lot more intense for that because it's just a bigger. But I like our group. It's more of a local group, and I think the one advantage we have is knowing the laws and the policies locally. It's not for somebody from outside coming in makes a big difference. So you can't finagle things. You know, people know, and we all share policy. The main policy group in Oregon is called Lexipol.
mhm.
It's nationwide, but almost all the police agencies in Oregon base their policy manuals in the Lexipol program. And that's, I've told you guys before. So if there's a policy change, so like during the last legislature, they changed use of force policy on chokeholds. So then you say, well, how am I going to write that? How am I going to write a policy on? We can only use chokeholds for this, this, and this, and make sure that it's legal and it's going to hold up in court. Well, Lexipol, we share all of our policies, so we're all standardized, and they have legal folks that they run their policies by, and the Department of Justice reviews them and then says, yep, your policy is legal. So when we get it, that small agency A, like us, you're not just winging it. You're not just writing a policy and hoping that it's going to work. It's a reviewed, vetted policy that it makes it a lot more legally standing for us. If we get in trouble or if somebody tries to sue us, we've got this really good product that we use. So I can give you guys a demo of our Lexipol. It's really neat site. We can change policies. We can customize them, which we do. We have probably 10 of them that are customized to our agency because it's different than a larger agency. We don't have a full-time detective unit.
Yeah.
So our policy can't be the same as Corvallis that has a detective unit. It has to be a little different. So we customize in certain ones. So
So you say this accreditation agency started 9 years ago?
no, I think it's about 15 or 16 years ago. Yeah.
And so how did they start? Did they take some federal standards and then personalize them to their community, or?
No, they actually got a bunch of chiefs so DPSST, Department of Public Safety Standards and Training, the actual board for the whole state. I don't know if you know this, but people that sit on that board are police chiefs and some prosecutors and some community members sit on this board, and that they make decisions like maybe for instance, like what are we teaching in the academy? What classes are required? Are we teaching in the academy? How many hours of training do you have to have for firearms training? And they make all kinds of decisions. Well, they got people from that group, and then some other outside states that had accreditation units, and then they got together and they crafted our standards off of that, and then off our state policies, and then come up with the original group of standards for us. They're overwhelming when you look at them because it's a lot of work.
Was that a tedious process? I would
Yes,
think
it
with
was.
all
Yes.
everybody's opinion.
It still is, to tell you the
Yeah.
truth, because every year we add and delete them. We add different standards for all different kinds of things that we think are important as we move forward. If a law changes, then you got to look at our standards and see if our standards we need to add some lines to prove that the agency is doing whatever the new law is or not. And what kind of proof do we take for the agency to prove that? So I'd have to show you more in depth what it looks like. So to prove any kind of standard, you either have to have copies of police reports to show that the officer are doing what they're supposed to do, or photographs or video showing that an officer did X, Y, Z at a particular type of a scene. So it's
I
Thank
have another question. You were talking about citizen complaints.
yes.
What happens with those? Do they, I mean,
Well, we've only had one in the last 9 years, so we've been pretty lucky.
does it justify, I mean, I can imagine people complain and it's not really based on fact.
So there's,
or-
okay, so let's be clear about that. So a complaint is against an officer. There's a complaint where it says, guy comes into court, hey, that officer didn't give me a break on a ticket. I told him I wasn't speeding, and that's not a complaint. A complaint is where somebody comes in and wants to file a complaint against behavior or unlawful use of force, or they were wrong for some reason.
It's major.
And it's a major deal. The beauty of our agency is that we have body cameras, and I'll admit it out loud because I don't care. So I take a lot of joy in when people call up and want to make a complaint, and I say joy because it is interesting to watch when somebody calls up and says, your officer called me XYZ and he said this and that. And in the years past, before we had body cameras, of course, it's your word against that, right? And I lived through that my whole career. It's really difficult. You can't prove that you didn't do something. Which is tough. The body cams you can, if they're on, which our guys wear them, and it's great to watch the video, and that doesn't happen. And then you can call a person, hey, it's probably a good idea if you come down and watch this video. I'm watching it and the officer didn't say that, and you want to come down and watch the video with me. And it's glorious. So, and we've had them come to this, we've had complaints come to the city council that I'll give you an example. I won't say the person's name, but we had one of my officers go to a house. The long story is an officer in a family member in another state called us and said, we think their sister is beating up the husband, and we'd like to have a welfare check on the husband. Okay, that's the call. One of my officers goes over, knocks on the door. He's got his body camera on, knocks on the door, and they've got this kind of a screen that you can walk through, in the summer. The lady's in there. Hey, how you doing? Can I come in for a minute? Sure, come on in. So she invites him in. He says to her, hey, what are you cooking? It smells good in here. She's super nice to her. Hey, I need to talk to your husband. Oh, he's in the back. So the officer goes back. Hey, we got this phone call. Your family's concerned about you. He has the conversation. He comes out and he leaves. Well, the woman wrote this letter to a member of the city council saying that Officer Nazi entered the house without permission, just walked in the house, walked in, yelled at her, said a bunch of stuff to her, demanded to see the husband, and there was this issue, and made a formal complaint, wrote up a big thing. And so what we did, we called her and said, hey, you need to come down, technically put it in writing. That's falsifying a report. But we had the husband wanted to come down and look at the video, and we showed it to him. And of course, we turned the video on and he's watching, and he goes like this. So I showed it to, I can't remember who it was. It Doug that got I think Doug. We showed it to Doug because he got the complaint that came in. And those are those ones, thank gosh you have the video, right? So otherwise, how do you prove that the officer didn't do that? There's no way. So anyway, are you coming in to harass us or?
Give it to say hi, and then I'm not harassing you.
Okay.
They're in good hands.
Yeah.
No, just check to see if you need anything real quick.
No, I think everything's going, and she's come in and checked on the video a couple of times. So it looks like it's going. I see it's being transcribed, it looks like. So, yes.
Okay, unless you need me for anything, I got marching orders from Mr. Brewer, and I got plenty of work to get done before.
Yeah.
Clock skills.
I think we're good. They're gonna forward the traffic plan for the next meeting, like I brought that up. We'll get that on the agenda for the next. Teresa's all over it.
Yep.
So we'll get that to you. Other than that, that's it.
Okay, yeah, next to, not the 27th, but the March.
The March meeting, right?
The body cam, does it automatically come on or do they have to turn it on now?
No, as Mary, that's great. Funny they bring that up because we just got our new ones. The officers have to turn it on every time. There's some exceptions. If our new, the one that we just got rid of, that timed out, if you pull your gun out of the holster, the click of the holster will turn it on. And so will the use of the taser. The minute you pull the trigger, it sends a signal. And what it does is, a lot of people don't know this, the cameras are recording all the time. And when you hit it and turn it on, it's just records it. They're on, so that you don't, so when you click it, it actually goes back 30 seconds and catches the 30 seconds before on. So when you watch the video, it's really weird because the first 30 seconds, there's no sound. It has the video, but the sound's not recorded. So then it goes,
Oh.
beep, you see the officer's hand go up in the video, touch the button, and then the sound comes on. So you get 30 seconds before they hit the button.
That's some training. just
Yeah,
because
I
in a
can't,
tense situation, I
Yeah.
don't know that that would be my
all the
first
new
inclination.
guys have no problem because they were trained with it.
Yeah.
The older guys that have been around for 10 or 15 years that didn't have them at the beginning, it's a mental, like you've got to tell yourself, before you get out of the car on a traffic stop, you hit it. So yes, that's the new cameras that we just got have a sleep mode because when they're on all the time, they're made for 8-hour shifts. We work 12-hour shifts. So guys were at the end of the shift, if they did a lot of things and recorded, they would run out of power sometimes near the end of shift. This new thing has a sleep mode, which allows it to like power down, but still turn on when you click it and still work with the gun and the taser and everything. But it takes some of the power off so that they last for 12 hours. It's funny how they come up with these things,
Yeah.
but the new taser, the company is great. We really like it. And then we store all of our body camera videos in a system called evidence.com, which is owned by the taser company. So we can recover those videos later on. And we keep the videos for all different time lengths, depending on what is captured. So traffic stops are 6 months. Felony arrests are 4 years. Misdemeanor arrests are 3 years. Any kind of mental health things are, I think, 3 years. Sex crimes are 6 years. So we pay for that storage, but we're lucky we get the small agency discount. So we pay this kind of a group cost. So no matter how much video we have, we pay the set fee, and it's cheaper than the other agencies have to pay. They're paying by the quantity of how much data is being stored. So that's my accreditation thing. You haven't seen it. If you want to come in anytime, and I could show you the hard five, showed them the hard files, what they look like. The old way we used to do it, which we had to make physical copies of all the proofs for each of the 233 standards. Now it's on an electronic system called Power DMS, but I have the box in my office of all the proofs. So if you want, I could show you like the use of force, show you what our policy looks like, show you what the standards are, and then the police reports and all the stuff that goes with it for each one of those things.
I'm so hesitant to stop by thinking you've got to be busy. I
No.
don't know.
No, I don't do it. So yeah,
They'll
any-
just tell me if you're busy and you'll just say.
yeah, or call and say, if you want to meet like for a couple hours one day, they've taken me up on the challenge numerous times. And you're welcome to come by. If you have a budget question, how we spend money on anything.
Speaking of budgets,
Yes.
I'm thinking of this camera, which I imagine is pretty expensive. What does it cost you to equip an officer?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think just the stuff that's on their body, about 25 to 30,000.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
would say probably, if you're asking me for the first upfront cost,
Yeah.
the vests are 1,600, just the inside, the actual bulletproof part. The outside's an extra 500 or 600, and each one of those things that carries different things are different costs. You've got the uniforms, which are expensive. The boots are $300. The tasers are about, if you were to buy one, 2,500 to 3,000. That's not counting the year-to-year cost of the probes and all the different things and the training you have to do. The gun is cheap generally, but then I'm adding into the cost of not only carrying it, but the training that you have to do
Yeah.
to carry it. So when you talk about I think the number that people throw around is the training to have all the stuff and the purchase the equipment is about 30,000 just for the stuff that's on their body.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the cars. People say, oh, those things the car itself, we get a pretty good deal on the cars. The cars cost about 25,000, the car, which sounds cheap, but that's the car with nothing in it. The equipment's like 22,000 bucks just for all the radio stuff. A police radio is 5,500 bucks just for the radio. You're not counting all the siren equipment, the roll cage, the lights and all the stuff that go, and then the installation of all that. So we just bought the 2 cars over the last, so one of them's still there. We're waiting for them to put the stuff. We're on a 6-month waiting list to get the equipment. One just went last Thursday. They finally called, okay, we can do one of your cars. We drove it to Salem. So the car cost us, I think, 33,000 and the equipment's 21,500, I think, for the inside the car.
Now, how many cars do you have?
Right now, we have 2 Chargers
Yeah,
that we bought like 4 years ago. We have an old Tahoe that we limp around and we use it in the winter because it's 4-wheel drive.
yeah,
You'll see that every once in a while.
yeah.
And then we have, and that's it for the police cars. The
That's
actual,
it?
yeah. So then I have my gray truck. That's actually got police radio in it and a light, but that's not in the fleet. And then we bought 2 more cars that we just got. We bought them and we actually bought the first one in 2021, and we got it about 3 months ago. They're so delayed, and then we bought the second one in 2020, in like January 2022, and we just got that one about 3 weeks ago. So it's over a year. That's the bad thing about, I always say that, it's a bad thing about a small agency. We don't have the purchasing power to buy, large. So we go with the county buys cars and they put us on their list when we need. And that's why we try to stay ahead, because then we spend more money in our budget on maintenance, which kills us. So for several years in a row there, when our budget was, it's a city's budget back 5-6 years ago, we were spending $19,000, $20,000, $21,000 a year in just maintenance, stuff breaking on cars, because the cars are driven 24/7 and they run 24/7, so.
I have another question.
Yeah, fire away, sure.
You talked about the 25 to 30,000 for the equipment.
Uh-huh.
You've trained an officer, they come in and work for 2 years and then they go somewhere else. Can any of that equipment be reused on another person? How much? Not all of it.
If the vest is the vest, I'm talking about the actual bulletproof part, yes. We don't like to do that because the vests become over time, because they get wet from sweat and just use and every day in and out of a car. We try not to do that. The standard on our accreditation is that we don't share the vest piece, the actual piece. That's $1,500-1,600. So we just buy new ones. Now we give those old ones to other agencies that have zero money, really small agencies, and they'll use them. But the insurance on the vest is only 5 years that it'll work, because they degrade over time. Kevlar degrades. So we have to buy new vests every 5 years,
Wow.
because they just won't stand behind them after 5.
Yeah.
So we have to,
Interesting.
Yeah. So we do now uniforms. We have probably 40 uniforms in there that people outgrow, or I'm saying that nicely, or somebody's left and we had bought them and we've rolled those over to different people numerous times.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And we have different gear, but like stuff like boots and stuff like that, obviously they're personal, you don't give those. But guns we do. I mean, we have guns, the set of guns that we've had, we're timing out on, right? We're gonna have to buy guns here in the next couple months, because Benton County and Corvallis just switched over to 9mm. And we have an interagency agreement that we all use the same gun, and we use 40 caliber guns, and they all just got new. And so we're test, as a matter of tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, when it's gonna be 24 degrees, we're gonna be test firing the two new guns out at the range. So we need to buy new guns, but they're not expensive. The guns are $600 a piece, which isn't a big, and all the guys are trained already, so it's not going to cost us the things that cost are the extra stuff, like we have to buy a holster. Holsters are $90 a piece, so you start adding up. So it'll be about $8,000 purchase for $9,000-ish to get fully equipped with a new gun and then the sights and all the stuff. So.
And then will they recertify them with a 9mm to see
Yeah.
that?
Yep. So yes,
But you
absolutely.
only have 2 of the new ones.
We only have, two of the new,
9mm.
no, those are just test guns that we have on loan to us.
Test guns.
Yeah, they're just test guns. We have two different brands. They're both the same cost, and it's just like personal preference. Then all the officers vote which one. So when I first got here, they had just that's 9 years ago. A year prior to that, they had switched over from Glock to Smith and Wesson. The Smith and Wesson guns, because a lot of these companies, they want you to buy their weapons, so they basically give them to you, and then you have to, you have to, especially small agencies, you trade your old guns back to them, and they take them. So it's a way for them to get to, then you have to buy their gear and their holsters and stuff like, so they make money on the ancillary equipment. But it's a good deal for a small agency, because if you have 75 people, you have to buy a $600 gun for 75 people, plus 5 or 6 extras, because guns break and parts need to be replaced. You have to have some extra ones. It's expensive. So
I have a question.
fire away.
Any proposed or pending legislation that you're kind of watching in regards to what might affect our?
Not like the last go round. I'm on that. There's a select committee. There's 4 chiefs, and I'm one of them, that we're looking at all the lists. I just got the list. There's 1,800 bills.
Yeah.
In the legislature right now, and about 200 of them have some law enforcement little touch to them, but they're nothing. It's all stuff that most of the stuff we support it. It's just little things, and it's more procedural things for DA's offices, and I don't think there's anything right now that we're just like, oh my gosh, that can't happen. One of the fixes is to the Measure 114, that Measure 114 passed, and we won't get into a debate about that because you guys will all lose that debate. But what it doesn't do is there was no carve out for law enforcement in the law. So my guys in every agency, your daughter, can't go home with their duty gun because it's a crime, because you can't carry a gun with the 15 round magazine in it. So there was no carve out for law enforcement purpose. Like our policy says our officers are on, yeah, it's just but those little things need to be fixed. And we have the Chiefs Association and the Sheriff's Association. We have a person, our director is, I don't want to call him a lobbyist. He's not really a lobbyist. He's the guy that they call. Him and his wife are just brilliant. They're both lawyers. They go to the meetings, and if they're talking about legislation, they give the law enforcement view. And what he does is when he learns about a meeting, he goes to the four-person group and says, hey, we've got a problematic bill. We need some language of why we don't think this is a good idea, or why we think it is a good idea, that we would support it. And we give him, and we talk about those on a regular basis. So we haven't had one. We've had over the last 10 years, we've had some doozies, like the
110.
like 110. Of course, I testified on that. I testified on House Bill 2002, 2 years ago, which was basically making it a bunch of felonies misdemeanors. And of course, law enforcement were going to be against those things for all different kind of reasons. I testified against the one last time where they tried to make lighting violations we couldn't stop somebody for a lighting violation.
Oh, yeah.
Which, because all violations lead to arrest. So the theory on their side was cops stop cars with the tail light out, and their sole reason for doing that is to find out if the person's been drunk driving. Well, let's just say it's true. It's not, but let's just say it is. Well, what if you don't stop somebody for a light and they are drunk and they kill somebody? What's the reverse? So if they have a lighting violation, it's still a violation. You get stopped regardless. Why would you ban that? Because you think that police are using that as a reason to stop. Well, yeah, we are using it to stop people because it's a violation. So that's the same thing as saying, oh, we're not going to stop speeders anymore in Portland. Well, Portland doesn't do that. They don't say stop. They don't do speeding tickets in Portland because they don't think it's fair for some reason. I don't know why. Politics, but they've chosen not to do certain things in certain cities for different political reasons. And when the Chiefs Association sees something that's decided in Portland can bleed out on the rest of the state, and we fight those in our group. Sometimes we win, sometimes we don't.
Aren't there efforts to try to clean up 110?
Yes, that's still been going on. I haven't seen I know there's several committees that are talking about it, but they haven't come out of committee to tell us what the things are yet.
Okay.
And there's several meetings coming up that we'll learn more about what that would be.
Yeah.
One of the things, like I've complained to you guys in the committee, you weren't here on the last year, but you were before, is that the bad thing about that is it limits, now regardless of what you think politically, it limits the police on doing investigations at car side. So like if we stop a car, it used to be if you see drug paraphernalia in the car, we can take the person out of the car for our safety and search the car for drugs. Because it probable cause would lead you to believe that there's paraphernalia in the car, there's probably drugs in the car. Well, because Measure 110, it's not a crime anymore. We can only search for crimes. We can't use paraphernalia or even small amounts of drugs open where that we can see it in the car, plain view, to search or to get the person out and arrest them for drugs or any other crimes that they may be attached to in the car. Does that make sense? That's this.
No,
So
it doesn't.
I know, but there's limit. They're unintended consequences, and that's as when you guys hear me talk about different laws. I think most of the laws that people put forth, 114, have the people have a good, they have good intentions, but there's trickle effect on enforcement for other things. And I think that's what a lot of the legislators never really seek out expertise in the field and say, how would this affect you if we had passed it? Would it work in your opinion? It sounds good, they sound great, but sometimes they're not, regardless of, you know, the actual intent, the original intent. So
Politicians.
yeah, I think so sometimes.
Making education decisions when they
Yes.
have no idea.
Yes,
no idea.
that's a great point. So does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay, I always bring them up at our meetings. If there's stuff that comes out, I will let you guys know. And because the city would probably need to know it. And I think it's a good thing for you guys to talk about if there's legislation that we feel that the council should reach out to our local other elected officials and say, hey, look, we don't think it's a good idea for our city. It could affect our city in a bad way, in some way, right?
Definitely.
So, all right, anything else on accreditation? I'll just throw that out. You're welcome to come in and I'll
Yeah.
kind of brief you on what it looks like, and you can see, or another thing you can do too, it's great bedtime reading on the website. She brought it up. If you go under the police department tab on the website,
Okay. On the city website.
you'll see one of the fact is our policy manual is there. So if you ever want to know what our policy is on anything, you can read it. It's the actual official policy is actually posted there. Also, our accreditation report from the last accreditation, it's about a 25-page report that goes over everything we do good and we don't do good. So it rips the Band-Aid right off. So it's all available to you there too. Okay. Yeah, move on.
Yes, please.
Okay, personnel briefing. So, and I'll just bring this up again because you guys weren't here. So we're fully staffed, which is great, but we're really short, which is hard to explain, but I'll explain it. So last year, I think we had 9 days or 10 days in the whole year where we had more than 5 officers on fully gainfully employed, meaning we had 2 people retire last year, Aaron Elliott, and then Mark retired in December. But we also had 1 officer who left in December to Benton County, but early in the year, he had knee surgery. He was out for 3.5 months. We had Brandon had knee surgery. He was out for 3 months. We had Mark earlier in the year. He had intestinal surgery and was out for, I think, 4 months. We had Mike Wolk had neck surgery and back surgery. He was out for 4 months. So if you look at our schedule, which is 412s, and we're supposed to have 2 people on duty at night that overlap each other, we ran single shifts all year except for 9 shifts. Does that make sense? So we were really, really shorthanded, which bleeds down to everything. So our big thing that hits hard is traffic enforcement, because that's an ancillary thing that we do. So typically we ride between 1,100, 1,200 sites. I think we had 600 sites last year. I might make excuses. I'm just telling you the facts. We just didn't have we have 3 officers down the whole year. So we're supposed to have 7, so you know. So when you're running with 4, you're just answering calls and writing reports. You just don't have time because of the overlap. So that's been bad. So we worked through that. We hired 1 lateral, just Jim Weichel, who's a 10 from Benton County, and we hired 2. Went through the whole process, advertised, got 2 brand new officers, both Hispanic officers, outstanding guys. Eric Salazar, brand new guy, it's going to be a 10. Speaks Spanish, which is the best, which is fantastic for us because we only have 1 other Spanish speaker. And then we hired Scott Andrade. Scott he's 40 something years old, which sounds weird, but he, former police officer from Northern California, was involved in a horrific drunk driving accident where somebody hit him and he was in a coma and out of law enforcement for about 10 years and was working at Oregon State Public Safety. And we snatched him from there, and he's gonna be in the academy in May. So that's the other part I brought up. We hired these guys in December, or I think one of them in late November, December. The next available academy class is May 9th.
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah, you've heard. Makes me mad every time I even bring it up.
And why can't they build
So
other classes, double up the classes?
yeah, I don't know. It's just
Not-
really infuriating. And then the new budget from the governor is to reduce 2 more. Even though we're got this long, and I don't think the politicians look at it, the money that goes to the academy and what it's supposed to do and how it affects the agencies. Because even if you think of any size agency, if you hire somebody and you don't have academy classes, people, we're hiring somebody that's not trained. Is not going to be trained for a long time. So what do? You can't just say, we're hiring you today, but you don't start work until 7 months from now. You have to hire them and pay them. But we're really lucky here is we got really great partners with Corvallis and Benton County. So what we're doing right now is all of our new guys, I think Corvallis has 4 waiting. Like a couple of them one of them starting, I think in there's an April class. And that's the next one, but we didn't get it. There was a waiting list for that and we didn't get in. So, and then Benton County's got 2 or 3. So all those newbies are going through a pre-academy, which sounds weird, but Corvallis PD and us and Benton County put together a 12-week pre-academy, which is awesome because when they go to the academy, it'll be easy. I mean, they'll have a lot of their requirements done ahead of time, so that means when they go to the academy and they get out, we won't have to do this 12-week piece. And it's actually better this way, I think, in my personal view. And I go back to my Los Angeles County days. So at Los Angeles County, you go to the academy, you get hired, you go to the academy. Before you go to patrol, you have to work in the jail for up to a year. So you get the academy training, the 16 weeks of academy training, you work in the jail. So you have a lot of interaction with criminals and writing police reports and do all that stuff. And then when you come out to go to patrol, you go to a patrol school that's 6 weeks long, and it's just patrol operations, how to stop cars, how to do felony traffic stops, how to respond to domestic violence cases and all the safety stuff. Here, when I came here, I was kind of flabbergasted. You go to the academy, then you go patrol live, and you're just going. And to me, it just didn't seem like the preparation was there for the safety piece. So the last 3 people that we've hired before this last year, like Blake and Jacob Kuhn, we hired them and had them in the office for about 2 months before they went to the academy. So we got to do all of the stuff, the safety stuff, the firearm stuff, the use of force stuff, all the policy review that is super boring, but you got to read our whole policy manual and take tests on it, have all that stuff done before they even go to the academy. So then when they go to the academy, they at least have, and they're riding with the officers. So they go to the academy. It's not just, hey, you're in the academy, you're trying to learn what a burglary is, and you don't have any field experience or anything to think about what that means when you're on patrol. You can learn what a burglary is, but how do you interview a victim of a burglary? And what kind of questions do you ask to get to the answers that you need to write a report about what happened? So that piece, I wish it was like this all the time, to tell you the truth. Now it kills us because of just the time element. Because by the time you hire somebody, they go through the pre-academy, they start the academy, you got 16 weeks, and then they have field training, which is 6 months to 8 months, 10 months, depending on,
What if they don't pass?
I know then if they don't pass,
Yikes.
or even worse, some other agency comes and snatches them away and hires them, then you're in a bad way. So
And they have to pay their training costs if
they hire the person within 3 years of their employment date, they have to pay for their training costs. But if they hire them 3 days and 1 week after, they don't have to pay anything.
And you have training officers that
Yeah.
take the new ones
Yep.
along and train.
Yep, they have to not only be on for a minimum of 5 years patrol, but they have to go to the state FTEP field training. I always forget what the field training something program, evaluation program, state program is, it's basically how to evaluate a trainee during their training process. So usually, if we hire somebody, they're usually, it takes a little, about 12 to 14 months till they're on their own. At least, maybe 16 months, just depends. It takes a long time. So if you lose somebody at a small agency, it really hurts.
Now, two of the ones you've stolen,
Huh?
which is great. What is it about us that caused them to want to come to us from Oregon State or?
So last was we had with Benton County. He was, and we had Mike from Lebanon PD and Brandon Thurman, probably been in your classes over the years. He came from Lynn County because they want to come work with me.
It's all about you.
No.
That's good to know.
And what
no,
happens
no.
after reality?
Yeah, then when
sets
reality
in?
sits in, that's a whole other thing.
I'm
Well,
glad to hear that we're getting some,
I
but.
think, I know,
and
well, we
that's
try to
not one
sell,
way
this is just
street.
gobbledygook, but I'll just tell you, but I think you can talk to your daughter about it. I think a lot of agencies, just because of, I'm talking, this take for hours, I'll keep it short. My personal belief is, I think it's, well, we know right now it's hard to get people in the profession.
Mhm.
There's a lot of negativity
Yes,
nationally. It
obvious.
sucks for just the psyche of people wanting to work. And I think the bigger agencies have done some serious disservice. And I've actually spoke about this at academy graduations. I think law enforcement, I always use this term, we talked about this the other day, have lost their way. And I say that especially bigger agencies like 40 officers and larger, because of budget things and different responsibilities, they've gone away from what I would consider like standardized policing. They've got away from going to calls for service like bike thefts, because what agencies will do, they'll draw a line in the sand. They'll say, okay, we have a CSO, a civilian, a kid, and we're going to send him to the burglary call. And that'll save us money because we're not paying that kid the same as a cop. Well, if I get broken, if you get broken and your house gets broken in, you don't want a 17-year-old kid show up at your house. This is my opinion, by the way. There's no data to back this up. But I think that leads to really poor investigations. It leads to poor police reporting on if we arrest a person later for that burglary. If that report isn't written or that crime isn't investigated properly at the scene, you can't charge the person with the crime. So I think I know that police agencies have matrix calls and don't do the service that I think towns or people deserve. And I think when we talk to people about coming here, one of the things that's really bad for law enforcement agencies and officers themselves is if you do this job every day and you don't feel like you're making a difference, you're spinning your wheels. And that's where I think, in my opinion, where burnout comes from. That's where you're going out every day, you're dealing with bad people, you could get hurt, your wife's, upset because you're going out, and then you find out you arrested this really bad person that assaulted a police officer last year, and he goes to jail and he's out the next day. That is not a very good thing to sell to a young person, that they're going to get into a career and that's what you're going to see every day. And it's hard to explain it unless you have a relative or somebody involved, or you guys come to my meetings and listen to me complain about it. But what I sell here is that we have a very proactive group that work here. We train our officers to be detectives, not just police officers, because we don't have a detective unit. Everybody has to do it. Everything. They have to do child interviews of sex abuse cases. They have to do rape interviews. They have to do serious traffic accident investigations. They have to do murders if we have one. I mean, Brandon Thurman came here, in his first year here, he has a murder suicide that he's the lead investigator on. We don't take it away and give it to some detective from another agency. We do them. And that's the value that I add, not bragging, but coming from my background as an investigative background in California at the Department of Justice, overseeing all these major cases, murder cases, and being on in a major crime team here, we don't have to farm those out. We do them. And I think that's a huge benefit to our office, to be able to teach young people how to do those kind of investigations. So we sell that. Hey, you can come here. Now, the bad part of that is that after 3 or 4 years, agency A sees that person and says, hey, that guy's a great guy. So we have lost 7 8 now with Luke, 8 since I've been here, 8 officers that are now at other agencies here that are all doing awesome. They're all training officers, sergeants. Kevin Fromm just got promoted. Did you know that? He got promoted to sergeant at Corvallis PD. So, yeah, so our officers are gone and they're doing great things. Matt Mosier gonna get promoted. Kyle Casey, detective. Just one after another. They're all doing. I'm proud of that. However, it sucks because we lose that office expertise as we go, and then we're constantly hiring because of it. So there's a bad too.
How much more are they getting paid?
A lot more.
Like 10,000 a year or 15, 20?
Okay, right now, Benton County's, their rate, so if you look at the pay schedules are about 18% higher than us, but it's unfair to say that because they just went through and just got a raise. So we're just starting our officers negotiations right now. Corvallis is like 26% more. So there's police officers that are street officers that make more than my lieutenant at Corvallis PD. So that's got to, regardless, I'm going to be gone in a year. That's something the city needs to fix, regardless of budget issues and different things. You've asked me, do we need to add another person? We do. We're at the point. I've always said, no, I think we're doing fine. We're just big enough now. We do need to add, but I'd rather take the money. I think the revenue's there because of our expansion in the city to pay these guys at least close. Otherwise, we're never going to keep anybody because why would you stay here if you can make 10 or 12 or $15,000 doing the same job somewhere else, and then have a larger agency where you can promote specialty positions and things like that. It's part of the small town. I keep saying problem. It's an issue with small town policing that you either do it the way we're doing it now, where you've got high quality people, you're going to lose them, or you try to get a bunch of old guys like me. And you're just constantly hiring transfers for 1 or 2 years, and they don't really aren't vested long term in the city. So it's a tough, it's a strategic issue that you have to address in a small town. So we've been really lucky. I say lucky. There's not a single person that we've hired since I've been here that I regret hiring. They've all turned out, and we train the heck out of them, and they do good work. I'm really proud of everybody, and they've gone on like little kids. They've gone on to be adults somewhere, in other places, which makes me mad because they rub it in my face. The sheriff loves telling people how I'm stealing your guy, But the nice thing is that our guys that are here are still, we're all good friends with these people that have left, and there's some good working relationships that have been built. But it is frustrating to lose somebody that you put a lot of effort and time into.
And since you are fully staffed, assuming
on paper.
Yeah,
Yes.
assuming everyone were functional, how many people would you have out on patrols doing traffic?
One.
Just one.
Right. Oh, you mean if everybody's trained and everything?
Yeah.
Okay, 2.
Two.
Because if you look at you'll have to look at the schedule. We have it up
At any time.
anytime.
24/7?
And usually what we do is if we're fully staffed and we have 7 people, we're on 12-hour shifts. So if you're to look at, which means you're on 4 days on, and you have 4 days off. So what you have is on those 4 days off, if you have 3 people on graveyard shift, you have 4 on, 4 off, and then you have the other guy is overlaps the 2 end days of one person and the first 2 days the other, and you always have 2 people. If everybody's employed in there, you have 3 people on graveyards. Everybody's on, unless there's somebody off for vacation or something. So you have 2 people on. And usually when we do that, you have one person that night, and they choose who it is, who answers calls. The other person does traffic.
Okay.
And so that's how you do it. Well, right now, starting tomorrow night, we're going to be down to 3 officers for 4 days, for the following 4 days. 3 officers total. Because Brandon is just coming back from knee surgery, and he'll be back. Blake is off for 3 months on maternity leave, and then our 2 newbies can't work. They don't fill a car. So the county is going to be working 4 night shifts for us, and then Brandon comes back, and then we'll be back to 1. Then we're just like this.
Yeah.
With no overlap. So it's just 1 person on duty. That's it. At any one time, which is bad because you just can't do this extra. I say extra. Traffic traffic enforcement's not extra, but when you're riding, if you're handling criminal calls or doing a child abuse investigation or whatever you're doing, the traffic piece is in between.
Priorities.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this last year was the worst. I mean, everybody's fine, everybody's good. It's just we had to limit people taking time off. People couldn't take vacation time at certain times of the year this year because we didn't have somebody to backfill them. And that's not good. But it was just a bad year. 3 surgeries, 2 people retire in 1 year.
You
It's
know,
not good.
I would accept that you said that 3 years ago when I first started.
I know.
It was just a bad year.
Yeah, that year, 1 year, we lost 3 guys one guy to Benton County, 1 guy to Corvallis PD and 2 guys to Benton County in 1 year. 3 officers transferred. So that sucks because you don't have any time. You don't know it's going to happen. And it's just like, generally, if somebody's going to retire pretty far ahead. Thanks for bringing that up.
A lateral,
Yeah,
what kind of training do they have to go before they can go on their own?
not much, depending on if you pick the right person. I mean, we've got really lucky. Mike Bulk was a detective seasoned 17-year vet.
But
Jim-
learning the street.
That's what it is.
That's the-
This last one, which is Jim Weichel, it was like 1 day because he's Benton County deputy. He knows he's backed us up and for years. And has been, with a dog handler forever, just a great, awesome guy. He's super funny. He's a great guy. Just a, superb officer. So we just got lucky. Guy, I can't say it on camera, some stuff, but it worked out good that we got lucky that he's able to come and be here for a year or 2 filling in. So
2 questions
Sure.
for you. What would you like to see happen with the academy training? If they-
I would, I think there's I don't want to say it's political. I say political meaning that it's just my opinion, not, you ask my opinion?
Yeah,
Okay, I think there's a lot of fluff in the academy.
oh, really?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff that the agency should be training, not the state, because every agency size is so different. We
Yeah.
do things differently. For instance, like a small agency. At the academy, they'll train, oh, you take this police report, because the purpose of your police report on a crime is to pass it to the detective unit. And then they're going to do this follow-up. I'm giving you a bad example, but
Yeah,
it's one that
yeah.
pops in my head. Well, we don't do that. So if they do that for 4 days at the academy on their basic police report writing, well, we want our officers to write a report because they're going to be doing the follow-up, and the details aren't going to be passed to a second person to go do additional interviews and write a search warrant or take some evidence that we see and send it to the lab. The officer's doing that. So if we're training them for an agency that's the size of Salem PD to do certain things, or that they know they're going to have, here's another big one. The premise at the academy generally is that the officers are going to have backup
Mhm.
and officers all the time. So when they go to call A, they're going to have an officer, and then if something really bad happens, they're going to call, they're going to get 3 more. Well, in small rural areas like us and the sheriff's department, where you're out on Llewellyn Road at 2:00 in the morning on a traffic stop, and the next guy rolling code 3 is 10 minutes away. If you get in a scrap, you've got to be able to talk your way out of getting in a fight with somebody for a long period of time if you can do it. So the training is aimed at this agency that's got these particular resources. And all the small agencies always complain about when they get back to us, you got to untrain them. We joke around, oh, now we got to teach you the real way we do it.
Yeah.
Because you can't, when you're all by yourself and you've been on the department for 2 years, you got to make this, you got to be able to hire people that can make good decisions. And the decision is not to engage most of the time. It's like, how do I stall? If I've determined this guy's going to jail for DUI, I can't just do it, because if I get in a fight with this guy and I lose, that's bad. So how do I get an officer rolling my way and wait it out? And what do I do in between? And those kinds of tactical,
Mhm.
training operations. So that's number 1. Number 2, I just think there's so many things in there that the locals should train, not the state. And I can't give you an example off the top of my head other than
Will
this one.
it, having these standardized accreditation, will
Mhm.
that help?
Yes, I think
Okay.
now, once all the agencies in the state get accredited, that would standardize operations a lot. For instance, I know this sounds like a stupid one, but if we arrest a DUI driver up until recently, the state rule is, because of some state decisions, is you can't tow the person's car. Okay, so I know this sounds like this is a great operation, this is a conversation. So ask yourself, if we arrest you for DUI, let's say you blow a 1.5. See you, Brad. By the way, congratulations on winning the football pool this year. Even though my win-loss record, I think was quite a bit better than yours. Just throwing that out. Just,
Yeah.
I won.
yeah.
The W is
It's all about the scoreboard.
The bottom line is.
Yes. So locally, what's the problem with that? So then if the guy gets booked and he's not staying in jail, because our jail doesn't hold DUI drivers, that guy gets booked at Philomath PD and he walks out the door and he gets back in that car and drives it. What's the ramifications, right? So that's a great example of a state.
Why doesn't your jail hold?
The jail doesn't hold temporary, our jail's too, that's why they're trying to get a new jail. They don't book people, they don't hold people, it's too small. They're only holding people that are in there waiting trial and are have sanctioned to jail, not booked into jail and waiting court. None of our people stay in there and wait for court. Like
What is sanction mean?
sanction means they've already got sentenced. So let's say you have a misdemeanor, you get arrested for possession of a gun. It's a misdemeanor. And the judge says you get 1 year in jail. Well, you're supposed to serve that at the county jail. That's not a prison sentence. That's a jail sentence. A felony, you go to state prison. So if you don't have enough jail beds at the jail, you don't go to jail. You get released on probation for your crime. So because the jail only has, I think, 30 something beds, and a bunch of those are for mental issues, then you have a certain amount of jail beds for booking for dangerous criminals like felonies. Then misdemeanors, we book all of our misdemeanors here and release them. They don't even go to the jail.
Mm.
And DUIs are misdemeanor. So if we arrest a DUI, we have them take all the tests here and then we release them. Well, the state standard is you don't tow the car away because somebody made a decision. That's considered a punishment. So if you haven't been convicted of a crime yet, DUI, we've only been arrested. Why are we punishing people and towing their car away? Well, the standard was always tow the car because we don't want the person driving drunk. So locally, we've changed that back, and now we've all together changed our policies because we've had incidents. We've had 2. One of the guys got out, and even though we had his car keys in evidence, he went, got a rock, broke into his car, jump started his car, and drove away. And he was really drunk and high on drugs. And then we had another one where a guy got out and drove his car, said he wouldn't, said his wife was going to pick him up at McDonald's. And the officer drove by. About 10 minutes later, his car was gone. And we knew it. He lived in Newport. So he was driving to Newport drunk. And we can't stop it. I mean, we can't stop that. So it's like little
Pretty
things,
scary.
procedural things that the state teaches and has rules about that locally, we don't have the people to sit there and watch his car for 3 hours to make sure that he doesn't drive. A bigger city might, but we just don't.
And you can't impound it.
Now we can.
You can.
Yeah, but I'm just giving you an example of a rule that we had to change.
Yeah.
Okay, but the training of that procedure at the state is to not. Okay, so there's tons of different things that I think the state could trim it down and mandate local and regional agencies to. I think one of the ideas floating around is to have regional, part of the academy be regional. So let's say it's 16 weeks, 2 weeks of it or 4 weeks would be regional, and the agencies would have to have trainers that they all loan to a group to do, let's say, patrol operations, which I think would be fantastic. Like this 12-week academy we're doing for the newbies. After they get out of the academy, before they go to patrol, us, Benton County, Oregon State Police, and OSU Police would have 1 or 2 people loaned to a group of trainers to do, how are we all going to do, pick the crime, how are we going to do a felony traffic stop together? And we all train the same way, not the state way, the state way we do it. Let's say we only have 2 people on duty. How are we going to do a felony extraction out of a car with 2 cars at 2 o'clock in the morning instead of 5? Because the standard is you have 5 cars there. Well, we don't have 5 cars. most of the time. So training it
You
regionally
literally
makes so much more sense, to do all different. How are we going to handle if Philomath has a violent domestic violence, and we're going to extract the guy out, and the guy's got the wife and 3 kids in there? How are we going to handle that? What's the procedures, the safe way to get for 2 officers to safely get the woman, so that's what it is 99% of the time, get her out of the house and have both officers close enough to each other they can communicate, but Officer A is talking to the victim and Officer B is watching the suspect. How do we do that together and train it together? Right now, it's trained at the academy. That's not a local thing that we do.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
So what would it take
absolutely.
to change that, to make it regional training?
It's money, it's dollars that we would have to agree to do that, and the state would have to allow us that phase of that training would be accepted as state training, so that the people can get credit, and then the officer to get his or her basic certification has to have X amount of training that's state approved. They would have to do it, but to do that, they're saying they would have to say, we're not going to have a 16-week academy, we're going to have a 12-week academy, and that's they're not getting the dollars. They have this huge training facility in Salem. That's all the premises that they have these academies.
But they're booked.
I know, but I think it's just an uphill. It's pushing a rock uphill. But it makes sense to do it that way, in my opinion. That's how it is in California. All the big agencies are regional. LA County Sheriff's Office has an academy that I think there's 50 agencies that use LA County's regional training facility. Now, LAPD's got theirs. Long Beach has one. Then if they're regional, and other agencies come and they train all together regionally, not in Sacramento or someplace a long way away. So
Makes sense.
yes, it does.
Your pizza's burning.
I know it's
Yes.
good. I'm done. So
All right.
what else? Anything else?
No, thank you very much.
You guys are awesome. Anything you guys need, ask. We can get on the agenda. You need to come visit at some point, and you guys are always welcome as long as you bring something to me. Now, that's the rule.
I'm not a.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. The bad thing is it goes in to the office and it's gone. And I usually don't get to eat it unless I'm right.
And they're not picky.
They're not picky.
You can carry it over there. If you can.
Did you bring that for us, or are you just
Yeah.
teasing? Oh, that was sweet of you.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Thank you.
Okay.
We're done.
Please adjourn.
Meeting's adjourned.